Let me reintroduce Nast. She is the BirthFit Regional Director of New Jersey, Northeast, and she was just explaining to us about BirthFit. She is a CrossFit competitor, co-owner of CrossFit Soar, and she is an awesome, powerful lady. There she is back online again. This is crazy. This only happened one other time, and I only lost connections once. So I don't know, maybe there's so many people hopping on at once and it's just kind of crazy with the server.
Yeah, that's okay, especially when everyone requests to join. I was like, ooh. Like I said, I'm going to hop on as Nast. I'll hop on as BirthFit New Jersey. So I'm just going to keep going back.
Okay, awesome. Great. So you were just telling us how, like, the people around you, there's so many fertility clinics and there's, lots of stuff going on for you with fertility and IVF. And so continue with that, what you were talking about.
Yeah, so we've had, I'm also a doula. So people approach me in that space. And so we have people of all ages, but lately it's been women in their 30s. Some of them are going through in vitro fertilization, so that automatically puts them at a high risk category. Right. I've had quite a few women in their 40s, which has been really exciting. And so not all doulas like to work with high risk clients. Not all coaches like to work with pregnant clients, period. Right. So then I felt kind of rebellious the last 6 years, but it's great. The conversation's starting to open up everywhere and it's not that uncommon anymore. And so I'm excited about that.
Have you watched Called the Midwives on Netflix yet?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
These women are so badass.
They are.
It's just like, if we had women like that nowadays, I think so many more women would just embrace the power of birth in such a different way. It's just truly incredible. I treat a fair amount of women that either want to get pregnant or are pregnant. And what's always fascinating to me is they kind of experience the same psycho-emotional issues about getting pregnant. Yeah. And then also about giving birth. It almost goes like full circle in a way. It's this real need to have a child. And, they go through many rounds of IVF, or if they're having trouble just getting pregnant naturally, there's this real angst and a real, void for them. Mm-hmm. And then what we keep instilling, or at least for me, it's about letting go of the want and the allowing to occur. Mm-hmm. And, they go through their months of being pregnant, and now all of a sudden it's like birth time. And all I hear from most women, obviously, because they're not comfortable anymore, they're heavier, things are not so right. And they're just like, I just want this baby to come and I want to do it in my plan. And I say to them, like, it's not your plan, it's the baby's plan, right? The baby is going to come the way it needs to. And you have to connect with your spirit and the baby's spirit and have this really moment where you're just the vessel that allows this baby to come into the world. And as strong as you can be physically and as strong as you can be mentally and emotionally, I think it's such it's so powerful, right? I never gave birth. I was lucky enough to be at the birth of my niece. And, I was with my sister and I was watching her, and it was the most primal, like emotional, incredible experience. And she was like a champ. I'd never seen a woman so powerful than in the moment of giving birth. And as a woman, again, I never had the opportunity to have a child, but it is like one of the most amazing things that the most amazing thing that a woman can do. And I mean, talk about power.
Yeah, totally. You said, you talked about the spirit and just how like baby spirit and mom spirit, there's a lot of science in it, but there's also this spiritual realm that we talk about a lot. We talk about in our doula work and midwifery. It is very common to talk about just mom goes to another place, another plane. And so, when she's greeted, when she comes back, there's this beautiful baby who, I do want to mention that's not always love at first sight.
Sure.
Like, hey, you are new here.
Right.
Nice to meet you. But, just seeing a woman in her power, seeing her in her most vulnerable state. I mean, I want to encourage everyone to get to a birth. Obviously it's a little bit more challenging right now with, COVID restrictions and everything that's happening. But I strongly encourage it, just to see what our bodies are capable of. And we say a lot, the word surrender comes up all the time. And that's a really big part of our prenatal series. And I see Trisha on here. Trisha's a NICU nurse, and we both teach this series together. And it's just been really amazing. At first it was all in person and we made everything virtual. We talk about that letting go, that surrender. We get to that point where, I can teach you all the technicalities, but at some point it's you. Mm-hmm. And we talk about courage and we talk about confidence going into it. And fitness has a big part to do with that as well.
Yeah, and I think also just as an athlete in general, and especially a competitive athlete, I know for myself anyway, the times that I could get past the discomfort is the time that I have that aha moment or that awakening. And it is always met with letting go. It's always met with, you know what? I surrender right now. I surrender to the discomfort. I surrender to the ego. I surrender to all of that. So it's about that training to get you to that place of surrender. And I think as human beings, if we're taught that from very young ages, that, it's about working towards something, but when you get there, you have to then let everything that you've trained for go and just experience the moment. And I think in birth, at least I watched with my sister, it went from this really like this crescendo, right? And then all of a sudden it was like, there was this miracle. It was like, how did that even, happen? We know physiologically, but you're just like, oh, there's a miracle. There's this baby, and it's just, I sometimes sit there and I cry about it because it's so incredibly powerful.
Yes. I was just at my sister's baby's birth 4 weeks ago, literally yesterday.
Congratulations.
And thank you. It was amazing. It's every single one I go to is amazing, but also your little sister, it's like, I've always seen her as like the little girl that just wouldn't leave me alone, like stole all my stuff, all my clothes, my toys, all the things. And to see her in that powerful space, I'm just so proud of her, but I'm proud of every woman that I work with, regardless of how baby comes, whether they come, cesarean or vaginally or whatever. Yeah. I am so proud of them. The preparation, there's a reason why we have 10 months to prepare. The reason why, this transition, we need time to almost accept it and almost let go of our, as my friend Melissa says, our maiden self. There's this old us that we're releasing, and there's a lot of grief that comes with, there's like a dying of self. And so that spiritual aspect is huge, is really big. And the competitive athlete too, a lot of people don't think that athlete and birth go in the same sentence.
It's the same damn thing.
Like, what?
Yes.
I'm like, girlfriend, this girl pushed for 3 hours, or she had to, hold her legs up for 45 minutes. Like that takes strength, going on all fours and birthing a baby. We always say it's the biggest fitness event of your entire life. It's like the Super Bowl of your life. Yeah. Regardless of whether you've been a high level athlete. A friend of mine, I was at her birth, I think about 5 or 6 weeks ago. She's a high level competitive pro athlete. And so, we really used a lot of the cues, the coaching. She was so coachable, really proud of her. And just listening is really important as well. So, being a competitive athlete is just, it translates really well into birth as well.
Yeah. This week, every time I have a guest on, I'm always inspired. So I write posts about it during the week on Instagram. And I kind of went down this research rabbit hole of exercise during pregnancy. And, I found that like back in the night, about 50 years ago, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology were like, women cannot move during pregnancy, flat on their back. They're considered, sick or patients, which is just so crazy to me, right? You're not sick when you're pregnant, right? You're not,
right.
There's nothing wrong with you.
And then it was pathological,
Yes.
Dr. Joseph DeLee deemed it as such. And it's just interesting to see how that in some places, I feel like that's still there, that those feelings, it's still very antiquated, So,
but I think on some like weird, collective consciousness, it is still there even now. And it's, it's women like you and the doulas and, the midwives. They're the ones that, like I talked about before about call the midwives. You're like these, these birthing coaches that can allow women to express themselves and like get through that. But what's so fascinating to me is that research paper also talked about, so like 20 years ago, they started doing research on women and fitness and pregnancy. And they did come up with this kind of protocol. And it was where, 150 minutes a week. So technically it was like 30 minutes every day, or most days, as they call it. I'm like, what's most days? You can't walk for 30 minutes a day. Like, it just seems so crazy. But that became the norm. And what was even more fascinating to me was that right now, I think this paper was written in 2019, right now, only 14% of pregnant women actually do any sort of fitness. Mind blown, crazy. That's not okay. So here you are talking about like you are preparing for 9 months to give the biggest athletic performance of your life, and you're not training for it?
Yeah.
Huh? Like, scratch my head. Doesn't make sense.
And it's interesting too. I love that you did research on that too. I think that part is missing in a lot of like prenatal education courses. And that's one thing that I'm very thankful for BirthFit for is a couple of years ago, we decided to put the history of birth in the United States is at the very beginning of our birth classes. It takes some time to go through. I mean, there's a ton of history, starting with colonial times, when men didn't attend births. Then we talk about, the grannies, the grannies of the South, the midwives there, and how they, kept birth going down there. And they're just a really big staple of the birthing system, United States, and midwifery. And then twilight sleep. No one talks about that. That's like morphine and scopolamine, and most women forgot their births. Right. You have like the 70s, the feminist movement, and how midwifery started to come back. But for a while, it just seemed like it was gone. And so, history is huge. Understanding who is ACOG, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and why, they have a big say in your birth. And so, we let people know, hey, they were antiquated at this time, like what you're talking about. But in 2016, 2017, they changed their stance on quite a few things, and they made these strong suggestions. And, we want to make sure that the hospitals, birthing centers that we birth at, that they're complying with some of these, strong suggestions by ACOG, such as you can eat, you ought to eat, to fuel for the birth. Movement, important, changing positions.
Yes.
You want to arrive closer to, active labor used to be 4 centimeters. Now it's 6 centimeters. So knowing those things can make a huge difference in your birth and making sure that you have a satisfied birth. So I love that aspect is the history aspect to show you, like, I was just talking about this morning, how far we've come, but also how far we actually still need to go. We're still quite, and so we don't repeat the past as well. So, there's a lot of people before us that fought for what we have now. And so we need to make sure that we defend what has been fought for and continue to press on for women everywhere. So it's so funny. I was like, I'm just getting into this to be a doula and to be at a birth and hold cute babies. And now it's just becoming like
a power movement.
I need to stand up. Yeah. I need to open my mouth and and talk to politicians and write letters. And, you know, I'm Latina as well, so I have a big mouth sometimes. And I, you know, I'm pretty chill, but we need to speak up. And so it's an important time for that.
Well, it's almost like, you know, there's this weird thing about, you know, taking the power away from the woman when she's giving birth. I mean, you know, I have patients all the time that are like, I don't want to feel pain, so I'm just going to have an epidural, you know, and then watching my sister go through it without anything was, you know, primal. And some people look at that like, oh, that's crazy. I could never do that. But, you know, again, she had prepared for it, you know, and she was in a very long labor. What did this woman say? I got pregnant at the peak of my fitness, and I'm currently 24 weeks. Congratulations, with twins. And they're so big and healthy, and I'm still able to run 4 times a week and be very active. I mean, there you go. There you go. Yes. Yes. I just, you know, run, Helly, run. I love it. I mean, what a great thing with twins, you know.
Amazing.
It's so great. And I think it's so important. And one of my patients that was in tonight, she's, you know, in her 50s, she had 2 kids, and she was asking me about tonight's, conversation with you. And she's like, oh, I had kids, so maybe I'll not watch, maybe I'll jump on. And as she's walking out the door, she's like, I just wanted to let you know that I ran through my entire pregnancies, both pregnancies. And I ran basically right up until the day I gave birth. Yeah. And I was like, there you go. That was her moment of standing on the podium, you know? Awesome.
On with your bad self. I love it.
So I did want to also talk to you about, like injuries and stuff. So as a pregnant woman, and, you know, as somebody who treats pregnant women, you know, the 3 biggest things that I see is SI joint dysfunctions, you know, low back pain, and, you know, a lot of just hypermobility. So, you know, because of the relaxin in the system, and there's just, you know, women become these like loosey-goosey, bendy things. So from a CrossFit perspective, or somebody that's working with them on strength training and maybe not so much mobility, more stability or coordination, balance.
Yes.
What do you see, and how do you work with these women? And is it beneficial for them during their pregnancies?
Yes, absolutely. So I love this question. So first off, you know, a lot of, you know, when it was so fun, I brought this concept to a CrossFit gym. I had to sell my husband and his partner, Steve, and he's sitting right here. So
I see it.
Yeah. So I had to bring this to these 2 men and explain to them, listen, you know, we have an influx of women in this gym. And believe it or not, most sustainable CrossFit gyms are made up primarily of women. And so
Seriously?
At least 50%. There's a lot of data on it. We've owned our gym for 10 plus years. So it's just, you really want to provide services for your women. And so 6 years ago, one of our clients was pregnant, and she's like, hey, I'm pregnant. What do I do? And I was like, I don't know. I'm like, go talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
Hey, you know, I have a lot of doctor friends, obstetrician friends, and this particular one, a little bit old school, and basically suggested that she not exercise at all. And interesting, because have you ever met one of those like type A personalities that goes to the gym like every day? That was her. You're like, what?
Is there a mirror around? I don't know.
Yes. You're turning a little red.
Am I red?
And that's okay. That's, you know, felt good, where she felt empowered. And so she went from working out every day to not working out, got a little bit depressed, you know, started sitting more, just more issues in her hips and her low back and all sorts of things. And so, you know, she was really pulled in multiple directions. And this is where I started asking the question as a trainer. I'm like, you know what? She is my first pregnant mama, but certainly not my last. And after that, I mean, we've had, I don't know, hundreds, a bunch of people come through our gym or through our services. And I love the fact that we're in CrossFit gyms. You have a lot of go-getter type moms, go-getter type women. And so I was like, this is the best place to be, you know, with these kinds of programs. I mean, hearing the word surrender makes some women shudder, hearing the word slow down. And so sometimes hearing that from a CrossFit certified coach and or a trainer is actually one of the best people I think that you can talk to, because you're like, okay, this person is, my trainer, but they're also telling me what movements to do, what movements to steer clear from.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned relaxin. Yeah, we have a ton of hormones running through our body, and relaxin isn't bad, but we have an influx of relaxin, at the end of our first trimester, going into our second trimester, and right before birth. So it's not that relaxin's bad; it's that relaxin in the presence of, really heavy loads is very dangerous. So we like to say, don't take lifts more than 80%. Obviously, in your second trimester, when you're feeling amazing, some women PR, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even mean to do that. And you're feeling good. You're feeling like, and that nausea is gone for not everybody. And so, it's really, if it happens, okay, cool. Like, congratulations. But we really do try to stick to that. And like you said, stabilizing type movements. We like to try a bunch of different kinds of movements and strongman type stuff, and anything where like you get to brace properly, have great posture, where you get to, practice being in a squat, practice being in a different plane of motion. I mean, birth is not in one plane. And what I mean is, like, we're not going in a straight line. Like, you might have to be on all fours. You might be on your side. You might be one leg sticking out. I mean,
on a ball, on a hammock, in a bathtub where you're pulling it.
Exactly. So we train we prepare for that. We do a ton of bear crawling. We try to do movements to wake up your glutes and your posterior chain. I mean, I can't tell you how many times, even if a woman has done a ton of squats and, glute bridges, whatever it is that she's doing, it seems like when baby's born, her posterior chain, her backside just shuts off. It's like, acid-all disease. Have you heard of that? Her butt is gone. And women feel really uncomfortable in their own skin and picking up their child. They're afraid. So it's important for us to help women, train prior to, but also, come back to connect with their own bodies and trust in themselves postpartum. I mean, if there's one time we don't talk about, it's definitely postpartum. It's definitely that time frame. Like, no one tells you what to do. No one tells you how to move, what to lift. And there's no real book because everyone's so different.
Right. What's the usual time frame? What's the usual time frame that you see in a woman postpartum where she's maybe comfortable enough, to come back to the gym or lifting or squatting or doing things that, if she hasn't had a episiotomy and obviously a C-section? I mean, what are you seeing time frame wise?
Well, BirthFit has a pretty clear and defined return to fitness, various programs that you do in different orders. And so it's interesting that everyone goes to their 6-week checkup. And first off, we don't see anyone for 6 weeks. I think that's asinine. I think that's crazy. We need to be seen at 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. But most people are cleared at 6 weeks. And, I want to say that who they're cleared by is typically an obstetrician. And in defense of obstetricians and obstetrics, they're trained surgeons. And so we want them in the corner when crap hits the fan. But they're not trainers, they're not holistic.
They're not exercise physiologists.
They're not exercise physiologists. So you get cleared, and this is not all of them, so I know I'm generalizing. I'm sorry if anyone on here. Anyways, you get cleared. They show up at the gym and they're like, well, my doctor said I can do whatever I want. And I said, okay, are you bleeding? Do you have lochia, discharge? Do you feel any pressure? How confident are you in your own skin? Any symptoms? So we go through a whole list. We basically take a survey. And what about diastasis? Diastasis.
That's a big one.
No one talked about, but
I
typically do an assessment on diastasis, and I always refer out. I know my scope, and I have a few pelvic floor PTs that I work closely with. So it's just nice to it takes a village, it takes a village of people, but typically they'll return to light movement, like yoga type movements, and relearning how to brace. A lot of women, like I said, the posterior chain shuts off, and it's almost like we have to reteach someone breathing and bracing mechanics, and something that we call, I didn't make up the term, but intra-abdominal pressure.
Yeah.
Stabilizing, right? Yep. And so what does that mean? Right. Box squats are one of our favorite movements, sitting down to a chair or a box, relearning how to just breathe, brace, and move in that order. If during class someone experiences some sort of symptom or discomfort, then we always have that conversation. We'll typically refer out. And sometimes, that woman has a prolapse, and it could be an organ's protruding or something is just not firing in the right order, in the right place. And so the collaboration with other specialists has been huge. So at that time, they might say, hey, keep working on, something we call functional progressions, or something like dead bugs or bird dogs, and come back in 6 weeks. So a lot of times we'll see people at 12 weeks. 12 weeks seems to be a pretty good amount of time where someone feels confident, they've been walking again, they've been outside, they're starting to test their body again. So it really varies, but 12 weeks seems to be pretty average.
And it's interesting though, from a PT perspective, like when somebody goes through an injury, or if somebody, hurts themselves or has surgery, atrophy in muscles can happen within 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So here you have somebody who just went through labor, a trauma to her body, essentially, right? And now all of a sudden you're making them wait 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks to do anything. You're now going to kind of fight against the atrophy machine. So it's relearning and having new neuromuscular programs to learn new ways of movement. And now she also has a new center of gravity again. Yes. Right? I mean, so it's like you have this baby inside of you that's heavy that, you adapted to, but now you don't have that anymore. That's pulling you forward. So now you're having to learn how to sit back on your heels again and how to drop your weight through, that lower sacrum. And it's just so fascinating. It's really about like this relearning of movements and how important that is for anyone, especially a woman that's gone through childbirth. So I do want to jump into CrossFit in general for you as a female, because I think it's super cool that you've got a lot of women or that's the statistics anyway. What have you found in terms of, not so much strength, because obviously we know that, technically a man is, stronger per se than a woman, but in stature and body size, I think that actually women are a little bit more stronger comparatively in their muscle formation. But men obviously have heavier bones and they could, anchor that muscle better. But how do you as a woman see in a CrossFit gym the differences in men and women in terms of mobility, strength? I did CrossFit a few times. Every time I went, I unfortunately got injured. And I was a gymnast when I was very young. So what was really interesting, I think I had a coach that, again, coaching in such complex movements, you have to be so on target. And it's very hard when you have a class of 12 people to be really specific about people's movements. But because I was a gymnast, he just assumed I can do a kipping pull-up. And I'm like, I could kip, but I can't even do a strict pull-up. So how do you tell somebody then, right? So there's this like big disconnect between, the coaches and then somebody like myself, who's this very competitive athlete. If you tell me you want me to do a kipping pull-up, I will find every way to cheat that movement to get up on that bar, right? Because the old gymnast is going, I can get up on that bar. Yeah. And then all of a sudden I like annihilate myself and then I'm injured. So like, what do you see in terms of like women and men with stuff like that in the CrossFit gym?
So, I don't know if it's necessarily like a women man answer. Like, I'm not going to separate the answer. I think it really depends. It depends on so many things. I mean, I don't know if you can hear me take a big sigh like 5 times while you said that. Like, you know, it is hard to hear when that happens. It's hard to hear when someone has a bad experience at a CrossFit gym. And, you know, we went through it too. Like I said, we've owned our gym for 10 plus years. And, you know, we went through the whole, like, we worked hard, we partied hard, and we worked out even harder, right? We hardly recovered, we hardly slept. We were a bunch of 20 somethings, and, you know, we didn't care. And then we were wondering why we were always fatigued, why we had weird nagging injuries. And then, you know, we got to a point where we actually had people coming in from all over, all walks of life. I mean, our youngest is probably like 8 years old, and our oldest is actually 69 years old. Wow. And, you know, we have a pretty good master's contingency, I'll say, at the 35 plus. And I'm really proud of that. You know, we have a lot of families and entrepreneurs and whatnot. Our main thing is we want you to be able to pick up your child at the end of the day. We want you to be able to show up to work tomorrow and not be limping. You know, we want to make sure that you can do the things that you need to do and be functional in your life. So that being said, we had to develop another program within our gym, so within CrossFit, in order to help people, you know, who were coming in with injuries. I mean, we had people coming in that had spinal injuries, that have knee surgeries, that have all sorts of things. And what we do is we have an assessment. We go through joint by joint. We go through range of motion, mobility, flexibility, stabilization, the whole enchilada. And then if you don't pass certain tests, then we actually refer out. I mean, we refer to you, we refer to other people, and we tell them this is not a good idea. And we've turned down quite a few people, and I'm really proud of that. You know, I was actually, I had some weird allergy things going on last year during, I don't know, June. I finally got an appointment with an ear specialist, and as I was sitting there, he just kept like staring at me, and I said, "Is this what ear specialists do?" And he's like, "Are you from SOAR?" And I was like, "How in the world do you know that? Like, am I wearing it? I don't think I was." And he goes, "You know, I went to an assessment a couple years ago, and your husband actually told me this wasn't for me. He couldn't touch his toes, and he was in so much pain, and it was kind of nervy, and I don't know all the details of it. I don't know the lingo, but we referred him out." And he goes, "That was the best thing anyone ever could have told me." And he goes, "I have so much respect for you guys." And I mean, that's just one story. So that's what we do personally. I feel like more and more gyms are starting to have that gym model, because what do? Someone shows up like a former D1 athlete, hello, and you know, you have an ego. I had a huge ego, and I was like, I can do that. You know, by like the 10th squat, I couldn't even squat below parallel. Like my knees were caving in. But like you said, I'm just going to do it. You taught me to do it, and I'm just going to wreck myself to get there. Yeah. So it takes some maturity. It takes some time. It takes some having those hard conversations. I'm sure we've lost some people from it. They're like, well, you know what? I'll just go to another competitive gym. And it doesn't mean that we don't move load properly. We just like to focus on mechanics a little bit more. And, you know, and we like to prep people. So like, you don't do a kip and pull up until you've earned a strict pull up.
That's right.
But, you know, I think we started to gain this reputation that if you come to our gym, you'll be trained properly, you'll get stronger, you'll get strong AF, and it'll be long-term and sustainable, and you won't go backwards. I'm not saying injuries don't happen. I'm just saying that there's a process to it, and we're very upfront and clear about it. But yeah, it happens with both men and women. You know, it's just like, I haven't really seen too much of a differentiation. I will say, our women in our gym are so strong. I have women older than me that I'm just like, okay, wow, I'm going to hang out with you.
I'll rub some off.
I do hope it does.
What have you found there is any change in women around their menstrual cycle itself, right? Because all the research that I've done and experienced myself just as an athlete, you know, in my low hormone phases, that first week and a half, I am like she-woman, and then like ovulation hits, and then you, you know, and I'm like, I can't even pick up 2-pound weights. You know, I'm like running a 15-minute mile and I'm like, I got this. You know, it's so bad. And then, you know, sugar cravings through the roof, and my recovery is horrible, and my, you know, delayed onset muscle soreness feels like it's on for days. So like, what, as a woman and as a CrossFit coach that's coaching women, what do you see in the CrossFit gym, and how do you, because this is, I think, a really another part of this new movement for women, you know, because most women are on birth control, right? So they have these like synthetic hormones that they really know, and they're like completely disconnected to their physical body. And they just assume that, you know, PMS symptoms are whatever. But there's a real science behind it, especially if you have a natural cycle where you're not having any synthetic hormones that you're taking. So what do you, and how do you, as a doula, and even as somebody who's coaching women, do you have women like track their menstrual cycle, or like, you know, do you find that they PR more on that low hormone phases? Like, what do you find?
I love that you're bringing this up. I actually feel like I personally can do a little bit better in this area in terms of like just it's funny because we have a private moms page for our gym, and, you know, not every woman is on there. And so I've been discussing allowing everybody into it. And it's partially because the conversation that we have with moms is a conversation that I think we can have with all women in terms of like, do you have a cycle? Do you know your cycle? Right. Do you know when you're ovulating? And there's some free, simple apps that you can have in order to, you know, that you can follow, that to see where you are in your training cycle, so on and so forth. I love that the women's soccer team, the USA women's soccer team, that they talk about this and they're training. BirthFit, you know, we have a training cycle that goes along with your menstruation as well. And so it's basically starting that conversation that it is okay to talk about your period, and do you have a period? One thing that I was a high school track and field coach for almost 10 years. And one thing that I found is that some girls lose their period, and they're okay with that it's convenient. And so one of the things, I'm like on this little platform recently, just talking to moms about their daughters, and, you know, of course, talking to them as well. And so losing our period is not cool. Mm-hmm. Understanding where you are in your cycle is cool. Mm-hmm. But it starts with the culture. So like, you know, we've changed the culture in our gym to talking about babies. We've changed it. We're talking about preconception and fertility. We're talking about breastfeeding. But one of the things that I feel like we're just tapping the surface on is our menstruation and what is considered an abnormal period, not normal. Typically we know when everyone in the gym, like, we're all synced up and we're all in the same cycle. And so you'll see, like, you know, you will see some PMS and we're like, oh, sorry guys, like, you know, or we're getting ready or on it. And all the women are like, oh, okay, me too. Right. We get it. Or PR'd, and then like this girl PRs and this one PRs and this one PRs. And it's kind of cool, you know, we just say, oh, okay, that's so great that, you know, you're in this phase, so am I. Yeah. And so just creating a culture is what I'm trying to do, and starting those conversations. You know, I posted something on your menstruation and like the blood, and is it like what the color means and all that stuff. Yeah, we're just starting.
Yeah. It's interesting because, you know, like diving down into the research and stuff and looking at like little girls, especially little girls, I mean, high school girls, you know, there's this real need to be these competitive athletes, but at the same time, they're going through these like crazy body image issues, and, you know, they want to fit into like whoever they see on the social media world that's like perfect and thin, and what happens then is that they lose their menstruation. So they create this low energy availability state. And it's like, you know, they're starving themselves. They're eating less calories. They're working out way too hard. They're losing their menstruation. And what happens then is they're setting themselves up in such a negative way for their future, because they could be creating fertility issues for themselves. They could be working towards, you know, osteopenia, which will turn into osteoporosis as soon as they go through menopause. And, it's this, again, it's having those conversations. And, I have patients of mine with high school girls that, that are track stars and that are, all these different soccer players. And, some of them are concerned because these teenage girls have such body images and they just, and yet here they are now getting injured more, right? You've got high amounts of ACL injuries, with soccer players and runners. And then what's interesting though, is on the flip side. So as a woman goes through menopause, and I had this whole conversation with a woman last night, we have this idea in our head, like if I starve myself and I work out really hard, I'm going to lose weight. Well, no, physiology doesn't work that way. You're going to go back into that low energy availability state and you're going to really F up your entire system. You're going to create more belly fat. You're going to have more visceral abdominal fat. You're going to have, ligament and tendon issues. You're going to create a totally pro-inflammatory state in your body. And it's like, but this weird concept, which goes right into this insane diet culture we're in right now. Like what happened to just macros? Your proteins, your carbs, and your fats, they're there for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just, amazing to me that this is, we have to take these, powders and boxed foods instead of going to the source and saying, let me go to the farmer's market, let me go to the supermarket and let me get some fruits and veg and a protein. And if you're a vegetarian, get a, eat quinoa, there's your protein. So,
One of the things, so interesting enough, years ago, I was a nutritionist for our gym. And then since we've hired people with more certifications and all sorts of things. And it's just sitting down with the women, I found that we weren't eating enough. We just weren't eating enough. And so we were in such a deficit, which is interesting because we're still pushing so hard, right? So, a lot of women work, they come to the gym, they like keep putting, it's like you have building blocks and they keep going up those with the building blocks and they go over that stress threshold. Mm-hmm. And then they wonder years later, they come to me and they're like, I'm not sure why I am experiencing infertility or why I have adrenal fatigue. That's been a big one we have to keep up. Or depression, anxiety, miscarriage. There's so many factors, so many factors. But, part of me is like, hey, we just aren't eating enough, or you missed your period. Is that, or you're on birth control? It's just, there's so many factors. Mm-hmm. And so there's no judgment. I also want to be clear on that too. I think, having that conversation, I'm so thankful that I'm one of the first people that many women talk to. And so I'm not saying I'm more important than anyone. It's just, I happen to be around them more. And so just having resources and people that I can refer them to, but having other women that are saying the same thing that I'm saying is huge. So, having this conversation, I had this with an athlete that I'm working with, and, it was some real mindset work, and it still is. It's, self-image. It's, a lot of like self-worth. It's just like, it's an onion, right? There's just so many layers to it. And a lot of it starts in our youth. But imagine if they had a coach in high school and middle school even that said, hey, let's talk about our period. As weird, they're all going to giggle and feel stupid. I mean, that's how I had 70 girls during my spring season and they were like, hoo, coach. And I'm like, nope, this is what we're going to do for practice today. And it's going to be awkward and it's going to be great. Let's go. But, we develop into women at some point and, I just pray that, they're able to just go on with their lives and be great people in society. But also if they want to have a family, they can. If they want to, whatever, like getting to menopause, like I pray they have, good resources around them and that they're healthy. That's my main concern as a coach and a trainer. Like, are you healthy? Mm-hmm. So it's a big conversation.
Big. And I'm so grateful for you tonight, and it's just been great. I've taken an hour of your time. Three bounces off of Instagram. We're back though. I could talk to you for hours and hours about this, and maybe we could do it offline at some point. We'll water with lemon because we have a whole lot of lemons from this year.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it's been an hour already.
Yes, so awesome. Does anybody out there have any questions for Nast? I mean, I think we just kind of covered so many bases, and for so many women in general. And I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and joining my little collective of empowering, women, and really giving you a platform to really speak the truth and to kind of debunk a lot of the things that we've been indoctrinated into in our society for like hundreds of years. And it's you and I as these kind of women that need to like forge ahead and be that the mouthpiece, right, for the younger generations that are going to come through, because we owe that to them. And to be grateful for the women that came before us, like these midwives, that in my favorite Netflix show right now. I honestly, it's just amazing, right? And we need to be that for each other as women. And I just am so appreciative for you to be here. So
thank you. And thanks for having these conversations and asking the questions. These aren't conversations that you have just all the time and anywhere, but I would like to challenge all of us to keep, my sister's on here. Hey, Nat.
Your sister, my mother.
Yes.
My mom is on.
Mama. So yeah, I love that we're just starting the conversation. We're having them. And as weird as it is to have it in a CrossFit gym or a studio or with your care provider, I mean, whoever it is, talking with your girlfriends, talking
with your children,
with your kids, yes, is huge. And so I love that you constantly start these conversations. And I've been loving your posts and tagging my friends in them. So thank you for just keep, doing what you do. I love it. So thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Be well, everyone. Next week, we have a holistic podiatrist on, which is kind of cool. She's going to talk to us about inflammatory processes and dealing them with completely holistically instead of always having to go for cortisone injections and all that stuff. So thank you so much, and good luck with Run, Helly, Run. Run, Helly, Run. Go run to labor with your twins and have the best time ever. Be the power that you are. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Integrate, embrace wellness, and join the collective.